Okay, guys, welcome to this week's webinar. It's actually the final diamond training in 2014. So glad you're all able to tune in. What I thought I'd do on today's diamond training is do over the last month, I've been doing a number of business assessments with people on their personal business, and we're talking about where they're at, I guess, from a business, and where I see them in regards to being able to move forward, in levels to achieve, what to work on, areas to improve in regards to skill and knowledge in 2015. So to see if they can achieve what they are, and whether their goals and what they believe is actually realistic and possible. So we're going to go through that today generically. So what you would be able to do is follow the task, jot down, take notes, and actually go through that process yourself. It's quite easy to do, and you can, some people have said to me, I appreciate the honesty. It's a bit confronting. You think you're further ahead than you are, and some people are, they're absolutely on track of what they've achieved, and they've built a great foundation to date, and they've really set themselves up. But it's a real good self-assessment based session. So what we're going to do, and we've actually been through this in theory before, and the theory of the money zone training. And the money zone training for me is just a really good way to look at improving the way you go about developing your skills and your business. So as we know in the money zone training, if you drew on a piece of paper an axis going up the paper and one going across, so like a graph, and you had on one side knowledge, so what you need to know, and on a scale of 1 to 10, and on the other scale we've got desires, actions, what you need to do. And based on that, if you rated yourself a 5 out of 10 of knowledge, a 5 out of 10 in what you're actually doing, tasks that are productive, you can sort of work out where you're positioned in the business, and I call it the window of opportunity. What is your window of opportunity to earn money? I say if you're a 5, you got 5 in skills, 5 in actions, dreams, desires, and what you're doing productively, your window of opportunity is what I call Sapphire Elite Money Zone. And unless you improve those two things, you're probably going to build a business in that Sapphire Elite space. If you get up to 6 and 7 on each scale, you're in what I call a director window of opportunity, because you know more and you're doing more. You're all of a sudden your opportunity window opens completely wide open to earn money in the director zones. And then obviously the 8, 9, 10 type of thing is diamond and above zone. So basically the point of this training is to assess yourself in what you actually do know and what you actually are doing, and where your window of opportunity is. And we're going to go through that now, and actually then I'm going to basically explain at the end how I consultatively approached each individual. So let's get into the training right away. So as I just mentioned there, the 3 money zones that we talk about: Sapphire Elite, Director, and Diamond Above. This is like a very accurate, when I say a blueprint, I really do use this as my blueprint. And it is a bit like a job description. These are the tasks that you need to do if you want to achieve this sort of level. It's really important to understand too, just say your business is just kicking off, you can be doing the diamond director based tasks from any point of time. And the example always is, I say to people, if you want to grow a diamond based business, for example, you need to be doing diamond based activities, and you need to know the knowledge. So a good example of that, I hadn't even basically joined JEUNESSE at the time, and I'd already paid for an overseas trip to the US to meet the owners and that and so on. So that's like a diamond based activity, but I certainly wasn't a diamond on day one. I was just doing the tasks that were required, and my knowledge was quite good, but it's always ever improving. So if your vision is to achieve over the next 3 to 5 years a director level of income, a diamond director level of income or a sapphire elite direct level of income, you need to know that amount, and you need to be doing that amount of tasks to be able to achieve those sorts of levels. All right, so let's get into what you need to do. And it's important to also understand the difference between sapphire and sapphire elite. What is really a sapphire? For me, I call a sapphire someone that really, you've got to tick that box off as quick as you can, but it doesn't mean anything. You can become a sapphire from simply enrolling 12 people, and those 12 people have two each. So you could be a sapphire with literally 36 people in your business. So it's very hard to say, look, you're going to get to sapphire and you're going to be earning life-changing income. That's just not how it is. But it's so important that you get to that level as quick as you can, because you have built the foundations of your business at that level, because you've actually proved that you can enroll people, but you've also proved duplication. You've helped people enroll too. So that's a really important thing. Sapphire Elite is when you have a really serious residual business. So that is, you've probably enrolled 3 or 4 times the amount of people than what you did to get to Sapphire, and you've developed leaders, and you've got a business that's built on sapphires. All right, and at that level you can comfortably say, if you are a sapphire elite, knowing that you have to do 100 cycles, knowing that to get to 100 cycles you've got to have decent leaders, so your matching bonuses are there, very comfortable to say most sapphire elites would at the bottom end be earning at least $5,000 a month, which is that's just the mathematics off the comp plan. But there are sapphires, for example, that have joined JEUNESSE in the US and enrolled diamond directors personally, and they're making a matching bonus 3 generations, when your first generation, a 30% match on a diamond is a lot of money, but they're still a sapphire. So it's really important to understand that just because you're sapphire, just because you're working to get that sapphire mark, it doesn't guarantee any level of income whatsoever. Knowing the mathematics of the comp plan at Sapphire Elite, though, you know that you have to cycle 1,000 times. To get there, you're going to have good people building that business. That is a real, true business. So we are specifically talking about the tasks that you need to do to achieve that Sapphire Elite level. And I always say, back to that axis, back to that graph, if you want to achieve Sapphire Elite level, you're what I call a 5 out of 10, in terms of knowledge, what you need to know. You cannot survive in this business unless you know everything about the product, everything about JEUNESSE as a company, everything about the comp plan, the JEUNESSE story, updates in JEUNESSE, knowing when events are on, knowing the JEUNESSE vision, knowing leaders of JEUNESSE story. You are someone that, I call a JEUNESSE expert. So I haven't come across one person in 3 years that have reached that Sapphire Elite level without knowing all that. It's virtually impossible to build a business of that sort of size without knowing all that. Okay, so what do you need to be doing in regards to your desires, actions, efforts? Again, I say these are people that are putting in about 10 active hours a week, from day one. They're doing tasks that I rank the tasks are 1 to 5. It's often really you're building a sort of a local, and a little bit of, majority of your business will be local, but there will be bits all around Australia, and you will have a little bit of international. But it's an area of the business, if you want to earn that sort of income, you could really do that from your backyard and build a business in your home state, for example. So what are you sort of looking at doing at that level? It's something that's very part-time. So you can continue with your job. You're not really making heavy sacrifices, but it's productive hours of 10 to 15 hours a week. Originally when I first did this training, the best part of 18 months ago, I sort of I've changed the my expectations and what I'm seeing of people to enroll. So originally I said, you default is 30 to 50 enrollments. Sort of up that a little bit now, knowing more Sapphire Elites coming through, asking them what their sort of personal enrollments are at to get to that sort of level, because there's at least 20 that have gone past Sapphire Elite in Australia now. So I just know the enrollment. So now I'm sort of saying to people, you've got to have a focus if you want to get to that level on a personal enrollment production of 50 to 80 people. You really truly need to set your default and your targets, if you believe and you want to achieve that level, is 50 to 80 personally enrolled. So if you're looking at your business and you've enrolled 20 people and you want to get to that sort of level, it's pretty obvious what my consultative advice is going to be. Focus on 20 more enrollments as quick as you can. All right, at that level, we've unearthed 2 to 4 Sapphire Elite quality leaders. 2 to 4 Sapphire Elite quality. Now, this is like the bit which, going through the process of people's businesses the other day, one of the tasks was write down the 5 best leaders you have on your left and 5 best leaders you have on your right. And when they did that part of the process, I said, are each of these people doing on a scale of 1 to 5? And on the scale of 1 to 5 of what they know, how well would you say they are going here? So I actually map back into, are they investing 10 to 15 hours? Are they on their way to enrolling 50 to 80 people? Are they attending all the events, local, Australian, global, and so on? Are they good at sharing the story? Are they good at sharing the vision of Jeunesse? And it often got back to, they're good quality. They're go-getters, they're hungry, they want to make it work, and so on. And that was really, in some situations where they were at. They weren't quite, putting in Sapphire Elite quality people, and they can change into that very quickly by just simply doing these tasks, making it more of a priority, spending more time in the business, focusing on enrolling more people, focusing on developing more people. You can change into any of these zones anytime based on the activities that you're doing. All right, so the other things, as we said, events. You do have to be attending our local events. We've got every event put up on our calendar to June. So print that out and go, look, I'm going to focus. I've got good connections in Adelaide. I've got good connections in Perth. I'm going to focus on getting people to those events next year. Now, when are those events on? So plan ahead. You're going to the Australian Annual Convention. You're probably going to the global. Most Sapphire Elites are at that global, the Global International, which was in Macau a couple of months ago. And obviously, you're qualifying for the Noosa Leadership Retreat in Australia. You know how to master your story. You know how to map that story around the prospect to really, get that person to engage in the business. And I always just say, look, the two things people always think are, can I do this and can this person help me? So if you've got a good story with a good vision on what you want to go and what you want to achieve, you will, attract better quality people. You could present a Jeunesse webinar, or the Jeunesse story at webinar quality, and when I say that, I'm saying that you should be on the webinar every Monday night listening to different presenters until you are confident enough to be able to recite that at a level that people are going to join because of your presentation. So that's an activity that I'd encourage every single person that has a vision of becoming a Sapphire Elite to focus on developing your story, and also make sure, whether you have to get a webinar recording because you don't want to wait every week. Aaron just recently published this week's webinar recording. Get that up and just basically say, that's what he says on slide 1, that's what he says on slide 2, that's what he says on slide 3, right through the presentation. So if you want to be a Sapphire Elite, they're not things that you can skip over. They're skills that are required at that level. Obviously, enrolling more leaders, more quality. You're regularly doing 3-way calls. What I've probably found over the last 6 months, since we've put a really, really strong emphasis on it, three-way calls are improving absolutely out of sight, especially with the people that I work with directly. You are running your own live events in terms of launches. You are someone that's helping set up the the opportunity live events, the corporate ones that we run, and really you're the host of the event. You're doing more leadership based levels. You're not just turning up with 2 or 3 guests. You're either doing part of the presentation, all of the presentation, so we get an extra event in. These are what I see. Every person that's hit that Sapphire Elite above are capable and are doing these things. You are great at sharing the vision of Jeunesse. And as I said, people join people. Your skill level in edification is absolutely amazing. One of my pet hates is when someone sets up a 3-way call and say, we're on the call, and they say, hey, this is Craig, and Craig, this is Peter, and then they shut up. All of a sudden I'm left hanging to actually try and pump my own tires up, and straight away, you've lost someone. What a great edification is if someone comes through, they really, say, this is a diamond director, he helped launch a company here, he's a part of the Millionaire Club, blah, blah, blah. And then you sort of pump the other person's tires up so they're actually feeling good about themselves, that you respect them. At Sapphire Elite Quality, people are obviously doing stuff every day. It is a part of your everyday life. It's not something that you're doing, every second week. All Sapphire Elites are engaging in the business. So the Diamond Director Zones, and I'm just rehashing back over this just so you can remember what it is you need to be doing and what it is you need to know to basically open up the zones before we go into how did I do a business assessment with each person, knowing their business was so different. So to get into this director zone level, it's a full-time, you are full-time, you've fired your boss, and so you should. You are earning a 6-figure plus income at the lower end at this level. In regards to knowledge, you are a Jeunesse expert, but your mindset, you've been doing extra training, personal growth, to improve your skills. You know a lot more about the industry. You know a bit more about other companies within the industry, the strengths and weaknesses, the rise and fall. You do actually know. You can pretty much recruit anyone on the planet if you are. You know everything about Jeunesse, and you know those few other personal things. You know how to sell the whole concept of the new age of business. I think that's a really important thing. When someone says to you about why are you doing network marketing, you talk about, no, I don't look at it like that. I look at it as the new age of business. This is the way we do business now, and if you don't, you just get left behind. So you can really address that story. Now, what are you really putting in? As I say, it's a full-time gig. There's no directors that are working full-time and are directors of the business as well. Every single person that's Ruby and above, they may have a business on the side, but their time is spent building Jeunesse. So it's 15 to 30 hours productively a week. In the default enrollments, I had sort of more like 50 to 80 originally, but now I'm sort of saying, look, you want to get to a director level in 2 years, 3 years, or do you want to do it in 5 to 10 years? Okay, if you want to do it in 2 to 3 years, you really need to have a personal production of 80 to 100 people. If you want to do it in 5 to 10, yes, certainly you'll get there around 50, 60, 70 enrollments. And this is just a generalized target. It's not once you've enrolled 50 people, you can put your hand up and say, I'm Sapphire Elite. That's not the way it works. It's just generally this is what I'm seeing when people are hitting these levels. You've got 4 to 10 that are Sapphire Elite quality. These aren't 4 to 10 people that love Jeunesse and have got skills and have enrolled 10 people. That's not a Sapphire Elite quality. They are doing, on a scale of 1 to 10 in activities, what we just talked about, and on a scale of 1 to 10 in knowledge, what we just talked about. So someone is not a Sapphire Elite quality person if they're not turning up to the local events. They're already ruled out as Sapphire Elite quality. They'd be more like a 3 to 4 out of 10, not a 5 out of 10. So they go into all the local, every event we just talked about, but you're actually probably heading to the US for the leadership retreat a year. You may do 1 or 2 other international trips as well. You are enrolling industry leaders. You're traveling nationally to build the business. Every director, certainly in Australia, would probably go into state building their business once, twice, a month. And you are developing leaders. You are running an empire by yourself at that level. It's just a matter of time before you start finding more leaders, developing leaders to get up to the diamond director levels, because your foundations, if you've got a 200 cycle business, is absolutely amazing. You're doing all the 3-way calls. You are running your own ship when you've reached that level. Diamond zone, probably not going to talk about that too much in today's session, but in knowledge, it's everything we've just talked about. But this time you're actually liaising. You've got a personal relationship with people in other companies in the industry. They know you because of your success. You know them. You're going backwards and forwards and so on. In regards to activities, JEUNESSE is your life. You look at Lyndon, Aaron, myself. We travel internationally at least 6 times a year. We're basically doing this 100% of our time and so on. But we didn't talk too much about that in the consultative process, because I was trying to get people to get to that Sapphire Elite, up into that director zones in the consultative process, and everything else from there, they will get there. It's just a matter of time. Time invested full time, focus on 100 plus enrollment, focus on the development of 10 plus Sapphire Elite quality. You're going to all events, plus you're traveling internationally to build the business. You're personally enrolling people that are reaching those direct levels. So how did we put this all together? So to start with, I went through, I asked them to send me through a form. And on the form, it had the date they joined, the title that they'd achieved, the number of personally enrolled they're doing, a list of their cycles for their last 12 months, month by month, so we could see whether there's growth there. We could see whether, based on the amount of personally enrolled they have to how many cycles they're doing, the ratios are there. Is that fitting in? I wanted to know whether they're doing Sapphire Elite quality things. I wanted to see on their left hand and their right hand, because at the end of the day, your business to get to Sapphire Elite and above will be really determined on your cycles. So I want to see if you've got leaders building both sides of your business to help you cycle. So I've asked all these questions. So they come back with their sheet, and I sit there and I'll look at it. I looked at it before we met up, and then we just went through an absolute honest assessment. So there was people that I said to them, your knowledge is what I'd only classify a 3 to 4 out of 10, because you couldn't even tell me when the next JEUNESSE events in Australia are going to be on. You only turn up, and in regards to activities, you turn up every second month. Like, this is a sort of thing we're going through for them personally. I'm seeing them, engage in JEUNESSE. They're doing. Are you doing Sapphire Elite tasks? Are you turning up to all the events? Are you doing regular 3-way calls? Are you enrolling enough people? Because if they're enrolled 15, but they're expecting to get to Sapphire Elite in the next 12 months, I'm saying, hey, that is possible to do, but you're going to have a default of 50 to 80 enrollments. Are you prepared to do that? So it was a real, some people called it confronting. Some people thanked me for the honesty. Some people said, I'm really glad that we had a talk about this, because I felt that I'm lagging behind. But yes, I can see I'm doing Sapphire Elite tasks. I know everything a Sapphire Elite should know. I've enrolled 50 people. My cycles are at this level here. It's just a matter of time, and that's, so that was really what this was all out of. So I am rating them on a scale of 1 to 10, and on a scale of 1 to 10. So some people may have even been cycling, say, 30, 40 times, but actually in their knowledge, I said, actually, you are a JEUNESSE expert in knowledge, and you've been going out, you've develop more skills, your mindset's better, you're probably a 6.5, and you're doing all the Sapphire Elite tasks. So let's just join the dots here. Your opportunity, you could get to elite, and even the director levels based on what you know and what you're doing. You're enrolling enough people, your cycling's there, it's just a matter of time. Let's keep working. Next, 5-10 leaders, that's the assessment. All right, so we went through that open and honestly. Then we looked at their leaders. So because we're looking at cycles, so some people come in with a business and they might be cycling, say, 15 times, and I'm looking at their left and their right hand team. They say, well, are these they don't have to be personal, they've just got to be in your business producing. Now let's have a look at each one of these people. Are they doing all the things a Sapphire Elite should be doing, and do they know everything a Sapphire Elite should know? Because we're talking about finding 2 to 4 Sapphire Elite quality. They're not Sapphires, they're doing, on a scale of 1 to 10, a 5 and a 5 worth of activity and knowledge. And we went through each of them, and that was where the real eye-opener was. So if they didn't have at least one on each side, I'm saying, look, you've got a lot of enrolling to do to find 2 to 4 leaders. There were some people that did have their 2 to 4 leaders. So, they had enrolled enough people. Their cycles were not too bad. I said it is a matter of time, but if I was you, I would focus on enrolling X amount of people, and this is where I would be placing them in the business. So we actually then went through that part of the process so we could see whether they had the leadership built in to build the depth to cycle enough. So this is all a part of the consultative session. We finally finish the session. We talk about the next 12 months, what I see, they need, what the first question asked is, what would you like to be at this time next year in terms of cycles, titles, whatever it is, income level, and they opened up and told me. And from that, I said, okay, you want to achieve, say, $5,000 a month, so that's about 100 cycle business. You're cycling about 20 times at the moment. You've only enrolled 30 people. All right, you don't really have the leadership in there. So if you want to achieve that by the next 12 months, my absolute obvious advice to you is you've got to get 2 to 4 leaders in that side. You've only enrolled 30. That's probably a reason why you haven't found them yet. So I reckon the most important thing for your business is to find 20 new enrollments in the first quarter or to the first 4 to 5 months of next year. And that can lay the foundations to try and find those 2 to 4 people. Then I would be comfortable in saying, yes, you then will be set up well and truly to do elite by the end of next year. You don't do that, you work with a group that you've got at the moment, I will say you're a 2 out of 10 to be able to achieve what you're asking. And it was just open, honest, and fair. You're doing the right task, enough. Your personal production isn't good enough because you've only enrolled 30 people, but you still want to be earning this sort of money. It's quite obvious the advice that I've been giving them. The advice I gave everyone is to really, if you weren't Sapphire yet, to get to that Noosa leadership retreat. Everyone that went there last year sort of nearly left with a Superman suit on, and they did progress forward fast. But not only that, have a high priority on not only being there yourself, but saying to everyone that are these emerging leaders, let's do this and let's all qualify for that trip first. It's the best way to launch your business. The first 2 months, you can actually move quickly, you can gather and gain momentum just by having a focus on getting as many people as possible to that Noosa leadership retreat. All right, so that was my advice to everyone to start with. The second bit of advice I said, from that point on, you want to have somewhere between 20 and 50 people at our national conference, which, whenever that will be set, dates announced soon, I'm sure, within the first 6 months of next year, I believe. But, you want to not go to the conference yourself with your 3 friends. You want to have a priority and a focus on having as many people at that conference as possible. because then people, that's where people see the vision. That's where they find the belief, and that's what really does drive people's business. You want other people in your organization to see the vision. So they were the two major bits of advice that I gave people to kickstart their, I guess, year for next year based on what they want to achieve. And you got to understand, every single person's different, but every person that booked me in for that couple of days of consults, we went through that process, and all those people were aspiring Sapphire Elites and above. They weren't people that that already ticked off, majority had already ticked off Sapphire and were cycling at least 20 to 50 times, and above that. There were some people that already passed Sapphire Elite where I was talking bigger pictures, bigger visions. So, we were already going through their business, what they wanted to achieve next year. They were already doing the right activities. It was just a matter of looking at the leaders and the structure in each side of their business and saying, okay, if you want to get to 500 cycles, I can see a weakness in your left-hand side or your right-hand side. So your next enrollments, you've got to drive that side. All right. So that's it, guys, for the training. I'm going to stop the recording now for our diamond training, but I'm happy to stay online and answer any questions. I'm actually also share a bit of my vision for 2015 and what I want to achieve, and I'd love as many people as possible to come along for the journey. And look forward to working with everyone in JEUNESSE in 2015. So I'm just going to stop the recording. Feel free to put down a few questions for me, and I'll share with you a bit of a vision for JEUNESSE in 2015. Thanks, guys.